Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Demai Perek Dalid, and we're going to be going through Halacha Gimel, Dalid, and Hey. We are learning Daf Lamed Ches. We left off all the way on top of the Amid, Mamish Tani, quoting a Braisa. We just learned a little bit about the prohibition of Genevas Das, of deception, and some very unique applications, and we will continue to learn now about Genevas Das, and then we will learn various halachas pertaining to fostering harmony between Jews and lahavdil non-Jews. That will be the shtickle before halacha dalid. Halacha dalid, the new Mishnah, will speak about when may a mishaleach, who's a chaver, rely on a shliach who is a am haaretz to purchase produce for him. So imagine you're a chaver. You need to get produce. You are unable to go yourself. You're sending a shliach. The shliach is an am haaretz. The Mishnah will tell you scenarios where you cannot rely on the shliach and scenarios in which you could rely on the shliach. And as we'll see in the Mishnah, if you tell the shliach to buy produce from a specific chaver, our Mishnah holds, then you can believe the shliach when he comes back with produce telling you that he got it from that chaver. If you tell the shliach, buy it from a chaver, but you, the sender, the mishaleach, don't specify from whom, then we'll see you may not rely on the shliach. That's the Mishnah. The Gemara will quote a Braisa that has the opinion of the Tana Rabbi Yosi that argues with the Mishnah that holds that even when you specify to the shliach from whom he should buy it, even there you may not rely on the shliach when the shliach is a am haaretz. That will be the sugya of halacha dalid, more or less. Halacha hey is going to be learning about other cases in which a am haaretz is relied upon when he gives testimony regarding tithes, regarding maasros, and as we will see, the word, the expression, kal heikelu ba'ach nesoi, that the sages were lenient when it comes to a person who's traveling, who mamish needs in certain instances, as we will see, to rely upon the am haaretz, mipnei chaya nefesh. If he won't be able to rely on him, he's going to run out of food, and there'll be scenarios in which one might have thought that you may not rely whenever there appears to be collusion, right? Which became recently a popular word. The words of collusion in the Mishnah is when you see two people that are goimlin zelozeh. A is testifying regarding B to B's benefit, to A's detriment. B is testifying regarding A to A's benefit, to B's detriment. When you see two people, each one's speaking up to others, I'm not that good in this area, but that guy is good, and the other one doesn't in reverse, sometimes we say, ooh, it looks like that they made a deal, each one, right, to collude with the other. There are times that we are chayshinan, that to this type of collusion, and we'll learn a case where even though our amaratzim, we won't have such a suspicion, all because of the klal of kal heikelu ba'ach senoi, as we'll speak out when we learn the sugya inside. Okay, chavra daf lamed ches, all the way on top of the amid. Again, we just learned on daf lamed zayin amid base scenarios or applications where one is not allowed to affect genevas das, deception. Like, for example, if I know that you already have where to eat, and I invite you to come to me nevertheless, that's called deception. Because I'm trying to show you how hospitable I am, how much I would like for you to come to me, even though when I know that you're not coming to me, by the way, it could be I'm deceiving myself. A person should not deceive themselves as well. I think there's a Gavaldik Gemara, there was a chassid, I think he went to the Kotzker Rebbe. There was someone who came from a very non-Hasidic family that he went to his Rebbe over Shavuos, and when he came back, his father asked him, "No, what did you get over there that you didn't get over here?" He says, "I'll tell you, father. When it says in the Aseres Hadibros Lo Signoivu, the Emma says it means not to kidnap people, but what does it mean?" His father says it means thou shalt not steal. From whom? He says from others. He says, when my Rebbe read it, I heard Lo Signoivu, don't steal from yourself. Self-deception is also Lo Signoivu, Genevas Das. And which is really what happens when I invite you, when I already know that you have where to eat, and I'm trying to show you how great I am. Could be I'm deceiving myself. Could be I would not have invited you if I would have known that you might come to me. So anyways, that was one application, and I will learn another application. So tell me, we learned in a Bryce. Don't deliver to a house of a mourner. And as the Pnei Moshe fills in, that we know that today, the first meal after the burial was called Su'udas Havra'ah, a meal that is meant to bring some healing. Most people that are in this state of mourning after the burial, they don't even have an appetite. So there is an inyan for others to purchase the food. Included in this Su'udas Havra'ah was a nice quantity of wine, as we learned together so many times. Now, wine, we're going to jump now here to the Mara Fulda. The wine then, the redder, the better quality. Speaking about quality according to the Mara Fulda. The less red, the weaker the quality. I know that nowadays things could change, it doesn't matter. But let's say that the quality of the wine could be ascertained from its color. If I am delivering wine, in this example, to a base avil, I'm not allowed to deliver it in a colored glass container. Don't freak out, Chaver. I know that nowadays all good wine is preserved, dafka, in a non-transparent bottle. I know that. In those days, it wasn't that day. The wine also didn't last that long in those days. The problem of me giving you wine in a colored container is that the recipient cannot see the color. And even if the wine is not the red, deep red, good quality wine, it will look that way. That's called Genevas Das, even though I'm giving you a gift. So what do you mean? Don't be picky. Doesn't matter. We don't want for the recipient to be under the impression that he received something better than what he indeed received. So there is a deception in the quality. Others learned this Gemara, there's a deception in the quantity. That if I have a very colored glass or a non-transparent glass, then the recipient might think that he or she received more wine than I actually gave. So again, don't deliver wine in a colored glass vessel. Why? Because the gifter will establish some sort of unwarranted claim of benevolence. Ooh, you see how good I am? Look at the, I don't have to say it. You'll be under the impression that I gave you something better than what you indeed received.
What does this have to be the house of a mourner? Could be anybody's house.
This is just an example. Maybe Kevan, maybe. I'm speaking, if I give it to a neighbor, the neighbor will discover sooner or later that the wine isn't that red. The neighbor will discover that the wine isn't full, the bottle wasn't full. In a mourner's home, because of the quantity of mourners and the amounts of wine that they used to drink. Remember, they used to drink 10 cups of wine. They would drink a lot of wine. By the time, no one would realize. So in other words, it's easier to make a deception willingly or unwillingly because the wine will be gone in a second. All right, Vita. Says the Gemara Tani, we learned in a Bryce. And now the link between this until the Mishnah is a little bit difficult. So we also learned before that, what did we learn before? That I am allowed, remember the Mishnah, I am allowed, the Chaver is allowed to accept that the Neder Zeruzin, the invitation from the host, if the host is celebrating, right? The Prot Gamia, remember that was the word, right? The Prot Gamia was if he's celebrating the Sheva Brachos of the first child, of the child who got married for the first time, first wedding of a child. If there's a very high level of simcha, a chaver could accept the invitation from the Amoritz. Why? We learned not mepnei eva. Mepnei eva means we want to promote peace. We don't want for there to be very bad feelings. We didn't come to that simcha. People get very justifiably so. They get upset. So maybe this is the link. In other words, we're learning about certain behaviors that objectively might have been outlawed, but they will be permitted not to create animosity. That's the negative way of wording it. And the positive way of wording it is in order to promote Darkei Shalom, let's say to foster harmony. All right, so funny, we learned in the Braisa. If the city that you live in has both Jewish and non-Jewish inhabitants, Hagaboyim goyim mishal Yisrael mishal goyim. When it comes to collecting charity, don't exclude the goyim. Now, in other words, we give charity to the goyim mipnei darkei shalom. But let me add to that. Don't think that it only means you give to the goyim. Collect from the goyim. They will feel equally excluded and upset if you don't collect from them. So, goyim mishal Yisrael mishal goyim. When you collect, whether it is food. By the way, if you collect food, you have to be careful. Give the goyish food, non-kosher, to the goyim. Fine. We're not speaking about the kashas. We're speaking about don't exclude the goyim. They're going to feel, they're going to have animosity. Collect from the goyim. And deliver to the poor. The whole establishment of a kehillah is a very Jewish thing that we take for granted. A kehillah means it's not each one for themselves, that there's a certain collective responsibility. Real social justice is a Jewish invention. We brought it to the world. The fact that the world today, like I spoke Shabbos, kidnapped this and they apply it in very unhealthy scenarios, that's on them. So you collect and you deliver. And Bikur Cholim, who had Bikur Cholim organizations? We have. So the same thing, if you live in a city where the Jews and the Goyim, so what do we do? So Umevakrim Choyle Yisrael v'Choyle Goyim. When you send people, right, to go visit the sick, you can't visit everyone, Jews and lahavdil the non-Jews. Furthermore, even when it comes to burial, both have to be buried. Now, there are some who are goydes im meisei goyim that cannot be the text because it's asur mida oiraisa to bury Yidden and Goyim together. And that's a big critique from many Beis HaChaims here in the city that they're not careful with that. Mamish. But coming back over here, but burial is an obligation from God, not only for Jews. The Isur of cremation is universal. Afar ato ve'el afar tashuv. In other words, the ultimate cycle that we complete is when there is a burial, because we all originated from the earth. And that's the ultimate kavod that we afford to the mace, dafka by burial, to exclude all the other ways that over the times the Goyim made up, which we have to be very careful to fight against in the right way. Umenachamin aveli Yisrael v'aveli Goyim. Maybe this is the link. Nichom avelim, because we learned before about the sending of the wine. Nichom, in other words, if the Jewish community has an organization and we do Nichom avelim, we should not exclude the Goyim. Now, I want to just say that the way we live today in the big cities, lav dafka, all of this applies. We're living in LA. The Goyim don't know what we're doing, compounded with the fact that there are many social services that are offered by the city. We're living theoretically in a society where the city offers a lot of social services, compounded with the fact there are millions of people here. The Goyim don't know what we're doing, but we have to be careful. When you live in a small place and the Goyim know exactly how the Jewish people are living, we have to provide services for both. Okay? Umachnissen klei Goyim v'klei Yisrael. There are two versions. Our girsa is umachnissen. Machnissen means to bring inside. So we're speaking about if people leave their stuff outdoors, and there is just, Hashavas Haveda doesn't only mean that when someone lost something to return it. To prevent someone from losing his things, there's a mitzvah. So if I see that you by mistake, you left something on your front lawn, I have an obligation to go to put it away for you. I'm not going to break into your house. I'll put it behind your fence. If there is, and sometimes a community had such an organization. People at night would walk around and they would do it to Yid and do it to Goyim. There's another girsa, look in the Shin and Nishchois Gimel, that not umachnissen, but umachapsen, to launder. Laundering is something that was extremely difficult. Today there's a machine. There was a big avodah. So if there was such a service that people would help others with take it to the river and bend over and wash it and to take out the water, it was a ganze ma'aseh. If you're doing it, do it for Jews and for Goyim. B'pnei darkei shalom. Wow. Now, says the Gemara, Girdoi are weavers. Weavers are Jews in the Shmata business. They once asked Rav Imi, Yoy mishta shal Goyim mahu. So let's go back to the darkei shalom. If the Goyim are celebrating a mishta is a wedding, not a religious holiday. They're celebrating a wedding. Happens to be that when Goyim are celebrating a celebration, there's a high possibility that they're going to direct their attention at a moment to their deity and acknowledge it. There'll be some sort of connection to Avodah Zarah. Now, does it change nowadays? It could be the Tosfos in the beginning of Masechtas Avodah Zarah, when the whole Masechta begins, that how many days prior to a Goyish holiday may we not do business with them, for them not to do a good deal and thank their God. Tosfos says in Europe that it's not shaykh nowadays, even though he was living in Europe. He says because nowadays, which means, I don't know, in the 13th century, in the 14th century, it's all cultural. They don't really believe in it anymore. So that's why halacha l'maisa, we don't have these restrictions. But let's go back. You have a wedding celebration. People there are ovdei avodah zarah. Can I participate? And indeed, Savar, it's interesting. Why was it the people in the Shmata business? I know that. I mean, I only know that business. My father was in the Shmata business because you do a lot of business with the Goyim. No, it's people that are in the service, and the people, a person is a butcher. He only does, you have a kosher market. You don't deal with the Goyim. But when you provide a service to Yidden and to Goyim, like nowadays at the end of the Goyish year, many times you are invited to a party, and that's the issue. Can I go? That's the issue. What we're learning now doesn't necessarily apply today, because, like I quoted the Tosfos, which many bring down, that the Goyim nowadays, even if they say they're Christians or Catholics, which is Avodah Zarah, they're only cultural. They're not religious. We're not paskening. Then it was more religious. It was not a religious holiday. It was a wedding. Can I go? So after we learned this brayso, that what? That mipnei darkei shalom, we have to provide services for the Goyim. In other words, we cannot completely separate ourselves. So he wanted to give a heter that, if you're doing business with Ovdei Avodah Zarah and they're celebrating a wedding, you can accept their invitation, mipnei darkei shalom. Imagine, if you won't go, they'll be insulted. The positive, you're fostering harmony. However, no zoisloi, there is a boundary. Big difference burying the dead, being mavaka chaylam versus going to a celebration. Amaloin Rabbi Ba, which is Rababa. No, Bahatani, Rabchia, there's a brayso taught by Rabchia. Yoy mishta shal goyim. If it's a celebration, then also you're not allowed to participate. And indeed, according to many, what was the whole beginning of the story, of the sad part of the story, which led to the miracle of Purim, is that we went to the Mishnah of Achashverosh. The Mishnah of Achashverosh was to celebrate the fact that he became a king, or to celebrate the fact that he copied the throne of Shlomo HaMelech, or whatever the celebration was. It wasn't an Avodah Zarah celebration. And he served kosher food. But a Yid is not allowed to go to a wedding of a Goy. That's it. And Ravimi was happy that he was stopped. Amar Ravimi says, Ravimi, Iluli, Rebbe Ba. If not the Rabba, if not Rabba that came and he brought the Bryce of Rabchia, then let's go with the version. Kfar hoyinu boim lahatar avodah zarah shalem. We would have come to serve their avodah zarah. In other words, the Gemara wants to point out that on one hand we learn darkei shalom. Darkei shalom allows us to mingle with the goyim to a certain degree. Mamish, to do chesed, to take money for charity, to help their poor, to be mavaker their cholim, to bury their dead. Mamish. But on the other hand, you have to put a boundary. Where's the boundary? When people are drinking wine, that's the boundary. Because people are going to lose their guard and there's going to be too much of a social interaction. And even though the celebration is not a religious one, if not for this, we would have ended up serving Avodah Zarah, not mamish, but we would have been somehow connected. And he was very grateful for that. And he says, Baruch HaMakom, thank God, that we have a Torah, and the Torah allows us, puts the geder to keep us distance from the Ovdei Avodah Zarah. Okay, gewaldig. Okay, just to say one closure on Darkei Shalom, guys. Darkei Shalom will never allow for anyone to break a biblical law. That's a general. Never. Darkei Shalom, when Chazal use it, is only used if there would have been a rabbinic prohibition. Just to make that clear. So the Chachamim lechatchila did not put their prohibition whenever they foresaw that prohibition will cause a disconnect and an animosity and eva, and we want to promote Darkei Shalom. Just to remember that. Whenever there's an Issa Doiraisa, we may never say, Darkei Shalom, it's not Eno Davar Soif.
Going to a church wedding.
Like Shalom Bayis. So therefore what? To be Machal Shabbos? In other words, you have to know where to apply it. Yes, I'm sorry.
Going to a church wedding when there's no wine served. Are you?
I think that's much more problematic. First of all, a Jew is not allowed to enter
Church, right?
Halachically, no, I don't say the word church. You cannot enter the room that they used for their worship. In any other room, halachically, not only a parking lot. I'm speaking about halacha. You can enter it. You can enter the building called a church. You can't enter their sanctuary, halachically. Okay, but it's very different. A person entering there versus a person participating in a wedding celebration. And if that's what we're learning now, that if people that are if they are celebrating a wedding, even if it's in out there in the field, you're not allowed to go there. Whether it applies nowadays, based on what the Tosfos is, that's a good halachic question. Says the next mission. So now, Vaita, we're speaking about scenarios where a chaver is allowed to rely on the testimony of an Am Haaretz. And here the case is that you, chaver, you're the chaver. You have to buy food. You cannot go to the market. You can't. So you're sending a shliach. The shliach is the Am Haaretz. Simple. So can a meshaleach or chaver send? He's giving the shliach the money. Can he send the shliach to buy produce? The shliach will come and say, "I bought it from Chaim Yankel." Let's say Chaim Yankel is a chaver. Can you trust him or not? When could you rely on the shliach? When can you not rely on the shliach? That will be the mission. Says the mission. If you're telling a shliach, meaning someone who's not trustworthy regarding if his produce would be the mai. If you tell him these words, guys, kach li mimishahu neman. If you don't tell him from whom to buy specifically, if you don't do that, you tell him generally, Vlad, buy it from someone who's trustworthy, without specifying from whom. Nishgut. Or umimishahu ma'asir, or from someone who gives tithes. Just to know what's the difference between neman and someone who's ma'asir. Good klal. The Rashi at the end of the right column says the mishu neman is someone who never buys produce from an Am Haaretz. Neman or someone, not a farmer, someone who will never own produce that's not already fully tithed. That's the word neman. Mishu ma'asir means someone who buys it from anyone, but he then separates the mind. Just to know, it's the bottom line is if you tell him buy it from someone who we can trust, not enough. Einoi neman, the big chiddush. Okay, now I 1 second. You know why? Because the shliach can always claim later, I thought he was neman. In other words, sometimes we say that if you're going to say something and you're going to be found out to be a liar or dishonest, that will keep you in check. Nothing will keep him in check because it could be true. He's not a neman. He doesn't know who's really a neman or not. But in contrast, however, if the meshaleach tells him, shliach, get it me ish ploini, if you specify the trustworthy person. No, what are you going to say? The shliach bought it, buy it from Chaim. The shliach will say he bought it from Yankel. You'll find out. No, there we already trust him. That's the din of the Mishnah. A person will not risk their reputation. Now, I want you to know that in the Gemara, like we mentioned in the intro, we're going to quote Rabbi Yossi, a Tana, who argues with this. But our Mishnah only has this opinion. Now, says the Mishnah, Holach likach mimenu. Let's go to the second case of the Mishnah. The Meshaleach specified the vendor that's a Neman. The Shliach went. But Omar Loi, when he returns, he tells the Meshaleach, Loi Matzasiv, you told me to buy it from Chaim. I went to Chaim. I did not find Chaim. You know what I did? I bought it from another seller who's trustworthy. So what would you think over here, Vlad? Since the Meshaleach said Chaim is the big Fruma guy. So that makes it clear what you're looking for. Maybe over here, even though he got it from someone else, he won't be able to say later, I thought to someone else's Neman. Because he's not like Chaim. You would have thought so. That's the Chavamina. Says the Mishnah, Vaited Ein in them. You are not trusted. In other words, the only case where you are trusted is where the shliach cannot claim later, I thought he's trustworthy. You know when that is? If you tell him from whom, and he says, I bought it from him. Now, will he lie? No, because you'll discover that he lied later, and people don't want to lose their reputation. Okay, so that's the Mishnah. The Mishnah differentiates, and the chiddush is the leniency is that if you specify the vendor, you trust the shliach, even though the shliach is a Am Haaretz. Says the Gemara, very nice. That is our Mishnah. Aber, it means in Yiddish, however, Tani, we learned in a Braisa that there is a Tana, which is Rabbi Yossi, that doesn't give such a leniency. Rabbi Yossi argues with our Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yossi, afilu amar loy mipleni, even if the Mishaleach specifies to the Shliach Ha'aretz from whom he should buy it. He tells him from whom, and the from whom is someone who is a chaver, ain't a neman. We still don't believe him. You know, the only time that you can believe a Shliach, if you tell the Shliach, go pick up the produce from Chaim, and I will pay Chaim. What will the Shliach do over here? He'll buy it from someone else. He's not going to get the money back. In other words, here, he will get it from Chaim because he's doing a favor. He's not doing a favor with his pocket. He's doing a favor with his time. He's picking something up. He knows that the sender will go pay the vendor. If the vendor never gave him the produce, he will be discovered to be a liar.
I don't think there's any money exchanging until
the money it goes from the Mishaleach to the vendor. That's it. You please pick it up, and he specifies from whom. And the Mishaleach will give money to the vendor only over here. What about in other cases? One second, don't you say that people are going to lose their reputation? No one wants to lose their reputation. The Shliach thinks the sender will never check up on me. Many people, they misbehave. No one wants to lose their reputation. You guys, I did him a favor. He's not going to check up on me. That's what Rabbi Yossi holds. So even if the sender says buy it from Chaim, the Shliach thinks I can buy it from Yankel, from the Amoritz. He'll never know. Here he'll know because the money has to come from the sender to the vendor. My time of the Rabbi Yossi, Ani Omer. Oh, in other words, why would he? I get it that he thinks he won't check up, but maybe he'll check up. Why would anyone risk exposure? There's another component. First of all, he hopes he won't be checked up upon. But we suspect that there is a benefit for the shliach to buy it from someone else. What will be the case? That ani omer echad karoiv matzah, that the shliach found a relative of his. Right? When money is not being paid from the sender, money is coming through the shliach. And in other words, if there is no benefit for the shliach to buy it from someone else, even if he thinks there's a very minimum risk of exposure, no one even will take the minimum risk. Where people trip up is that there is a benefit to make a change. There is a big probability in the mind that no one will know anyway. So that motivates the shliach to deviate. And that's why we cannot trust him.
All right. We have no concern for Tuma and Tahara.
So I want to respond to this by reminding everyone the following. That's a good point. That what we learned in this Masechta is that there are two steps of a chaver. There's Neman and there's a chaver. Neman is someone who's trustworthy only regarding Trumas Umaisis, but still not believed regarding Tuma and Tara. Which means that when a Meshaleach only cares about tithings, he doesn't care about Tuma and Tara. And you should know that a Yisrael is allowed to eat produce that's tummy. He just doesn't want to have to go out of pocket. And after he buys it, to Nachamal separate from a Smaiset, and another time he doesn't want that head. So you're right. When we're focusing on Nemanus, you're right. Everything midrabanan is tummy. Correct. Very good, kid. Now,
thank you, Rabbi.
Says the Gemara, I want you to know that we explained Rabbi Yossi correctly. We explained Rabbi Yossi correctly that unless the sender is going to be the one paying the money to the vendor, we never trust the shliach. But we explained, number one, because he doesn't think that he's going to be checked up. Number two, there is a motivation sometimes for him to buy it from a relative. He put these two things together. We got a question mark on the Namanos, and we don't trust him. That's the real understanding of Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara right now has another Havamina of the understanding of Rabbi Yossi. And we're going to clarify that. Now, quickly, a few words. When a get is given between a man and his ex-wife-to-be, the Torah says he, the man, the husband, gives it to her hand. Chazal tell us, because of the laws of shlichus, that even if he did not place it directly in her hands, there was no v'nasan b'yada. If you give it through a shliach, it's also effective. There are really three types of shluchim, as the Rambam words it. Let me just speak about the two that people are familiar with. Shliach lohilacha, which means the husband can send a proxy to give it to her on his behalf. And then there's a shliach lekabala, which is a messenger, a shliach that she sends for him to receive it on her behalf. When she sends a shliach, when is she divorced? When the husband places it in the hand of the shliach. When she sends the proxy is her extension. When the man sends a shliach and the man gives the get to the shliach to give it to her, when is she divorced? Only when she receives it. When she is the one that sends the shliach to receive, then the rule is that get doesn't have to reach her hand. When the get reaches the hand of her shliach, she's divorced. Hold that thought. Another thought, just another rule. When a woman does not come from a house of kohen, she's a bas Yisrael or a bas Levi. She married a kohen. While she's married to the kohen, she gets to eat truma. She has no children with him. When she gets divorced, she no longer can eat truma. That will be the case of our Mishnah. So there's a woman that's only allowed to eat truma because she's married to a man. They're getting divorced. They're not getting divorced face to face. She sent a shliach lekabbalah. So the question is, she'll get divorced before she gets the get, because she gets divorced when the shliach gets the get. The moment the shliach got the get, she cannot eat truma. They didn't have texting then. So says the Mishnah, we learned this a Mishnah in the 6th chapter of Masechtas Gittin, the Tanin on Taman, that when she says this Kabbalah Gitti, if she tells a shliach, her proxy received for me a get, but she specifies b'makam ploini. She says where. Let's say she's in New York, and let's say the husband is in LA. She thinks he's in LA, so she tells the shliach, go to LA to receive the get. Here is the question, guys: did she mean that the shliach is only allowed to receive it in LA, or she's just giving him a good eitzah? I think he's in LA. What happens if the husband was next door and he gives it to the shliach the moment he walked out of the room? If the get has to be given in that place and it takes 10 hours to get to that place, she can still eat truma for the next 10 hours. Because even if the shliach got it as soon as possible, it takes minimum 10 hours. If the shliach doesn't have to receive it in that place, maybe the husband was right outside the door. That's the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah that Oichel is betruma. She can eat truma. How much time does it take to travel? Make the cheshbon. The quickest person, humanly possible, with whatever technology, with a car, with a camel, I don't care. If it takes 10 hours, she can eat it for 10 hours. Because when she said receive it there, the shliach has to receive it there. However, the Tana Rabbi Elazar holds, no, the moment the shliach leaves her sight, she cannot eat truma. Because maybe the husband was next door, and Rabbi Elazar holds that the shliach is allowed to receive it next door. And my tamo, maybe the shliach found the husband right outside the door. And let me use the words that we have in the Gemara. She said, receive for me to get in that place. It's called Maramakayim Heroloi. She only meant to tell him that, listen, I think my husband is there. She was helping the shliach, but she was not limiting the shliach. She doesn't care where the shliach receives it. So holds Rabbi Elazar. Now the Gemara, we're going to turn to the Aflamet Chesamad base. In the Havamina, not understanding Rabbi Yossi, the way we explains it links Rabbi Yossi with this Rabbi Elazar. Gan Eden. Says the Gemara in the Havamina Asya, when comes out that Rabbi Elazar in Gittin holds like Rabbi Yossi here in Demai, and Rabbi Yossi here in Demai, in the Braisa and Demai, not in the Mishnah, holds like Rabbi Elazar. In other words, just like we see Rabbi Elazar holds, that even though the woman specified a location, she tells the shliach, receive for me to get in LA. She didn't mean dafka in LA. She didn't mean dafka in LA, and therefore she does not object if the shliach receives it right next door. Similarly, Rabbi Yossi holds that the shliach, that's what he thinks, that's the Havamina, that why can't we trust the shliach when the Meshaleach says, buy it from Chaim? Because the Havamina is, Rabbi Yossi holds the shliach doesn't think that the Meshaleach dafka wants Chaim. Maramakoim. He's giving me advice from whom I should get it, but I can get it from someone else. That's why we don't trust him. That's the Havamina. That's the link. Says the Gemara, that's not understanding in Rabbi Yossi. Truth is that Rabbi Yossi, that Rabbi Yossi goes even more than Rabbi Elazar. And Rabbi Elazar in Gittin won't necessarily agree with Rabbi Yossi. Give you an example. Even Abu Lazar holds. Guys, listen to the words. If a woman tells the shliach, don't accept the get for me only if you are in LA. If she said those words, that dafka in LA, even Abu Lazar will agree that the time it takes to get to LA, she can eat truma. Same thing over here. When a man tells a shliach, buy from me produce from Chaim, everyone knows that the Meshaleach means only from Chaim. Gewaldig. And over here, nevertheless, what's the chiddush of Rabbi Yossi, who goes further than Abu Lazar? That afilu amalai here, when the Meshaleach tells the shliach, al tikach, don't buy produce only from Pliny. Rabbi Yossi holds, even when he made that statement, still you cannot buy from the shliach. Like the Braisa says, the only time the Meshaleach can eat the produce, only if the Meshaleach tells the shliach, you don't even pay the vendor, I'm paying the vendor. And that's a whole different word. That's much further, because what did we say? Because here we're saying, Rabbi Yossi holds, that a shaliach will deviate. He's afraid to be discovered that he is an untrustworthy. He thinks no one is going to check up on me. I'm doing you a favor, and he's motivated by buying from his relative. So in other words, Rabbi Yossi over here goes much further than Abu Lazar and Masechtas Gittin. Atkan Yesudya of Halacha Daled. Yes.
In the case of the get, he is traveling to LA to give the get. The ex-husband is traveling from LA. They run into each other. And in the way, they're going in different directions. Is he to give the get to the guy or not?
So that's a machlekes tanoim. In other words, the machlekes kevan is when a woman sells a shliach and she specifies, receive it to me in a specific location, the Rabbi Lazar holds.
I get.
She doesn't
care. Should he give it to him or not? So at this point, they're going in different directions. Should he give it to the guy or not?
If the woman specified a location, it's a machlekes tanoim whether he can receive it. There's a machlekes.
Got it.
Okay, guys. Now we're moving on to another case where even though someone is a am haaretz, he will be relied upon when he says that this is already tied. What will be this new case? And as we spoke in our introduction, when we're speaking about a ach nesoy is a traveler. I just want to give a quick preface. I know where it's getting late, but this is the nekuda, guys. Traveling is not what it used to be. I'm not only talking about the danger. I'm talking about today you have a bank card. I know most of us don't have money in the bank, but if you have money in the bank, you can access it anywhere. You didn't have a bank card. You went with money in your pocket. And don't think people traveled with extra money, because just like you have in the East Coast, all of the bandits, the tolls, the ganovim, where did the thieves learn it from? There were always bandits on the road stealing your money. The difference is that at least in New York, they steal a few $1,000s when you travel, but they limit to look like they're honest. Then they were more honest. They took everything you had. So people that traveled, they would hesitate to go with a lot of money because there was a high chance that there'll be a bandit stealing all your geld. The problem is that you would run out of money for food. When people traveled, they made an exact cheshbon. How much money do I need for food? How much money do I don't need for food? And therefore, now this is the key. When you buy food from a am haaretz, you know what the problem is? The problem is that you can't eat up all of it. You have to separate trumas meiser. You have to separate meiser sheni. So it could be that when you are traveling, you made a cheshbon. I'm going away for 10 days. I need X amount of money to buy X amount of potatoes to survive. And if you didn't take into the cheshbon that you have to separate the my separations, you will go hungry. And because of that, as we'll see, for travelers, there was a dispensation. We lowered the standard. It says the Mishnah, if you enter a city and you know no one that's in that city, you don't know someone. This is very important. If you know a local that's Neman, you have to buy produce from him. That's what the Mishnah is implying. When you know someone in the city that you can trust, you cannot rely on anyone's testimony. Our Mishnah is speaking about a case that you don't know anyone in the city. So what do? And you go into the Beis Medrash, right? Or you go and you say, Mikan Neman, Mikan Ma'aser. We said the word Neman means someone who never buys Peiros HaMa'aretz. Ma'aser is someone who, no matter who they buy it from, they are always Ma'aser the Demai. Now, you don't know who's responding to you. But someone responds And he begins by putting himself down. Ani ein neman. I'm not the trustworthy guy. But ish ploini neman, so-and-so is trustworthy. The guy says, I'm trustworthy. How can you trust him? Maybe he's not trustworthy. So he's not trustworthy when he's saying I'm trustworthy. Understand? Or Chazal use the words, ein adam choyte v'lo eloi. No one sins if they don't benefit. So if he's saying, I'm not trustworthy, but that person is trustworthy, you can believe him. There's a chiddush here. Now, what happens if you, the traveler, you bought from that guy? And now, Amar, then you ask a question that's not a halachic question. You're asking a quality question. Mi kan moicher yashan. We're speaking about a product, let's say wine, that the older, the better the quality. That's a good example. I know there is a limit to that, especially in those days. It didn't last the way it lasts today, the wine. But it lasts for a year or two, and the older, the better. So he buys the produce. He bought it from Chaim because someone testified that Chaim is trustworthy. And then he says, who sells good product, good quality? Chaim says, I don't have good quality, but that guy has. Now, this might look like collusion. Now it might look like, you see, each one is complementing the other. Mikan Moicher Yashan and Amaloi, the guy from whom he bought the tithe produce, says, me, actually, the one who sent you to me, he's the one that has the good quality produce. Now you can argue, oy gewalt, they made up this deal, maybe what I bought is not good anymore. We don't say that. A chiddush. Even though it looks like they're making a collusion, nevertheless, in other words, the initial informant's testimony could be relied upon. We're going to learn a lot about collusion in a moment. Now, another scenario says the Mishnah. This is a whole different thing. Donkey drivers, they made a living. We're speaking about donkey drivers that they would go to locations where a certain product was bought at cheap. They would buy a lot of it. They would go to a city where that product was more expensive. That's why they did it. These are business people. The travelers is not a traveler. The traveler is the businessman who's here to sell. And no one knows them. So Amar Echad, one of them says, Shali Chadash B'Shal Chavei Yashin. I want you to know that my product is less of quality, but the other guy has better quality. Shali Yedem Mesukin, B'Shal Chavei Mesukin. Right? Mine is still demai. My friends is good quality. In this case, we are afraid of collusion. Einam nemanim. According to the Tanakhama. You know the joke of two beggars? They sat outside a church. One guy had a big Magen David, one guy had a cross. So people left the church. They looked at the Jewish charity, and in spite of the Jewish charity, they put money in the crosses. So someone walked over to the Magen David guy and told him, maybe you should not sit over here. So they turn to each other and he says, the Goyim are going to teach us how to do business. You understand? Sometimes it's good to have two people. I'm inferior, you're superior, so everyone is going to buy from you. We don't believe you. However, Rabbi Yehuda holds you're the man of the Gemara. We're going to have to go tomorrow to learn more about it. Let's hop another few lines over here. Frag the Gemara in the first quiz, how does it work? How can you believe someone who you don't even know? How can you rely on their testimony? By the way, but you know, if someone is suspect, they're not neman. So in the first case of the Mishnah, you don't know anyone. A guy says, mine is not tithe, but that vendor is his tithe. You believe him. Why? If the presumption is everyone is a not neman, which is unless you know otherwise, how can you rely on them? So that's the part. That indeed the Chazal were lenient by travelers, as we spoke out, because they have to sustain their life. They don't have extra money. If they're going to have to buy food and still have to take off the mai, they didn't make that cheshbon when they took pocket money with them, and because of that, yes, this is a novelty.